Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and harness creative expression to heal ourselves and our world. And welcome to HORF, Radical Care in a Late Capitalist Hexscape. My guest for this episode is Darci Ellenberger. Darci is the candy-fueled copywriter behind Sweet Tooth Creative. Her done-with-you services are the sweet spot for neurodivergent, disabled, and chronically ill small business owners who want to boost brand awareness without burning out. I'm really excited to have Darci on the podcast today. Welcome to HORF. Hello, Darci. Welcome to HORF.
Hello.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So before we started, I noticed that you were working in bed today, which is totally what we're talking about. So
Yes.
I tried that. I can't record from bed. Otherwise, I totally would most of the time. It's too far away from the internet.
You got to get a booster. I have a Wi-Fi booster. That's the only reason I can do it in my bedroom.
I actually just talked to Ricky about that. I'm like, is there any way we can boost the internet upstairs? Because I'm going to be recording with Briar this summer. And I really don't want my video with Briar to have the Green Bay Packers office in the background, which is fine.
Legit.
It's legit, but it's my dad's office. This is not my aesthetic. I would prefer to record upstairs in the neutral gray room. It's a little more calm.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I was like, not what I pictured when you came up.
No. Usually when I'm in the workroom with you and with Briar and Marisa and stuff, I'm in my bedroom, which is, in bed, and my walls are gray and very calm. Well, the paint is calm. I painted it a neutral color so I could hang up all my artwork that I've curated from other friends and artists.
Awesome.
And it's a lot more chill. This is my dad's office, which my mom painted, and it's all Green Bay Packers.
It is.
Yeah, which was interesting. This year, my dad he was reading on his phone, and he sort of just like put his phone down and just sort of sighed. And he's like, I think I might be done with football this year. And I was like, Dad, what happened? And he goes, Aaron Rodgers keeps talking.
I love your dad so much.
So do I.
Your little the stories or when he comes into the workroom when we're hanging out, like, oh my God, he's the best.
Yeah. So. He's like, first it was Brett Favre and the fraud case. He's like, he stole money from poor kids. He's like, and now Aaron Rodgers is a conspiracy anti-vax guy. He's like, what is with these guys? He's like, can't they just be normal? And it's really disappointing for him. He's been a Packer fan his whole life.
Yeah. My partner debates giving up football as a fan frequently. He's gone whole seasons without watching because he's just basically players doing terrible things and there being no consequences for it really kind of gets under his skin, which I appreciate. And he's like, I think that's it. No NFL for me this year. And I'm like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Yay.
So since we talked about working from bed, which is usually where I am if I'm not painting, and you're there right now, how have you received care this week, Darci?
Well,
or in the last week, since we're recording on a Monday.
Yeah, I'm going to go back 7 days. So one of the best ways that I receive care, and I think that we don't talk about this as a privilege enough, but I have the privilege of having a really stable family of origin and parents who are very supportive, and my mom especially, because my dad has his own health issues, but my mom is in good health, and she basically really gives me the care I need in a way that I can't get anywhere else. I think I don't know, moms just do it better, And so last week that looked like we moved back when I was pregnant with my daughter to our hometown. And I was not really in favor of moving back to our hometown, but it's things like this that make me glad we did, in addition to my daughter being close with her grandparents. Obviously that's That was the main driver of the choice for me. But I was really stretched thin last week and did not know how I was going to make it to pick up my prescription, and I really needed it. And she went and got my prescription and dropped it off at my house and like left it in between my screen doors, and like doesn't seem like a major thing, but it was such a huge help to me. And it's the type of help that I think a lot of people don't have on hand. So that was
Mhm.
one of the ways I received care in the last week. Also, the prescription was my ADHD medicine, which I have not been able to get since October.
Right, because there's such a shortage of it.
Yes, and that has been, I have not wanted to look at how devastating the shortage has been for me. I haven't
Yeah.
wanted to look at too closely at how much it was impacting me. I was just like, well, it is what it is. We're just going to keep going. But when I got the text, the automatic text that was like, your prescription is filled, and I haven't seen that since September of
Yeah.
last year, I almost started crying. And I was like, oh, maybe this is having more of an impact than I've been willing to admit. So, just the medical system may be working a little bit properly, or the way it should. For a second for me was another lovely surprise
Yeah.
piece of care that I received. That should be standard, but isn't.
Yeah, I get that. I went 3 months without my emergency migraine meds. I had my maintenance drugs,
Ugh.
but not my they're called abortive meds, which I'm sure people love to hear. But that's what it's called. When you get a migraine and you're trying to interrupt the migraine attack, it's called an abortive medication.
Mhm.
And I went 3 months without mine because Medicaid just decided I needed prior authorization, and my doctor tried like 3 or 4 or 5 times, and they said, "Nope, you need this, it doesn't count, or we're not gonna take it." And then they finally came back and said, "Actually, you need to try a triptan." I can't take triptans because of other medication that I'm on.
Because the insurance company knows more than your doctor.
Right. Well, if the insurance company had looked at the other medications they're paying for, they would have known that I can't take a triptan.
Oh, God.
Because it's contraindicated by my other prescriptions. So I went like 3 months without it. And one day, like same as you, I got the automatic text that said your prescription's been filled. And I was like, I didn't call one in this week. Is it possible that this is my Nurtec? Dare I hope?
Right?
And so I went in and I was like, hey, I got a text. And they're like, yeah, your Nurtec got filled. And what it took was the pharmacy tech had to get on the phone with like the state of North Dakota's Medicaid prescription people. Apparently, she's had to do that a lot since the first of the year for a lot of different medications for people. Just the first of the year, their formulary changed, or they got
Yeah.
stricter, or something changed in probably the COVID emergency Medicaid extension or whatever it was. But she said, yeah, she's like, I've spent a lot of time on the phone for people this year, but I got it filled, and it was like the most exciting day ever. So I totally get that excitement of getting a text from the pharmacy. It's like, oh, this is my life now.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get texts from the pharmacy.
Yeah.
They sometimes give me the senior discount if I'm there on senior day. I'm
Okay.
39.
That hasn't happened to me yet, but
But I'm
I
also
mean,
like, I pick up stuff from my parents too, but I'm there all the time. I'm there all the time because I can't get 90-day fills on some of my meds. So I'm there every month for half my medications. And they're not, of course, filled at the same time.
right. You can't sync them. Heaven forbid.
No, no. And it's a small town pharmacy. They know everybody. And one of the semi-retired pharmacists was in my dad's wedding, my
Oh,
parents' wedding. It's a friend of my dad was in my parents' wedding. My dad was best man in his wedding. It's just one of those small town, they know everybody things.
gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, the CVS pharmacy texts are frequently wrong or operating with outdated information. So I was just like, this is probably not real. Don't get your hopes up, Darcy. And then I called and they were like, yeah, it went through. And I was like, oh my God. Yay.
I had trouble with CVS when I was in Idaho.
I've never not had trouble with CVS.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think I've heard many good stories about CVS.
No, I
The
mean,
good stories that I have about CVS are all about individual pharmacists or techs,
that part.
not about the actual corporation.
100%.
Yeah.
So, but bless the good pharmacy techs because and pharmacists because they've had a rough few years.
They really have.
So
So, if people haven't picked up on it already, we're both chronically ill.
True.
and trying to run businesses at the same time.
Yep.
But we have support teams, yeah.
Yeah, I think we found our community.
So, you want to tell me a little bit about running your business as somebody who is chronically ill and dynamically disabled? Because you ebb and flow a lot.
Yes,
So,
yes.
what does that ebb and flow kind of look like?
Well, I mean, one thing to clarify, like when we say we have support teams, I don't actually have employees or contractors that I go to. I do my support team looks like a co-working community, a business support
Yep.
community, the
Yep.
Catalyst, which is of course where I met you. And honestly, the Catalyst is the reason I don't have to hire contractors
Right.
and
Yep.
stuff, because it's amazing and the support there is fantastic and you get so much. And the best part is it's so flexible, because when things ebb and flow the way they do with me and it is so unpredictable, it makes it really hard to commit to a contractor and commit to, an employee, something like that, when I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to do this month. So something like the Catalyst is set up where, it's self-serve to a certain extent. Like you have to
Hmm.
show up and ask for what you need, but then it's unlimited
Right.
support when you need it. Ugh, it's just a dream come true. So such a game changer for my business. As far as like being there for clients and dealing with fluctuations in my ability to show up, that has been an ongoing question in my business. And, I've gone through periods of burnout when I have misjudged how much I can do, when flares hit me out of the blue. But I pivoted to done with you services. I mean, some of it you just learn over time, like what works and what doesn't. You try different things to see what feels good. But for me, being in the Catalyst and experiencing done with you support, and then reciprocating with my own copywriting support for fellow Catalyst members,
Hmm.
made me see that done with you copywriting works, which prior to that, I never would have thought to try it, because the idea of like having a client be right there virtually with me as I'm like drafting their copy was terrifying.
The horror of being seen. Yeah. Don't,
Yeah,
don't
and
observe
of
me.
of of having your rough draft seen, it's like, no, you get to see the final one, the one that I decide is like good enough.
Right.
I don't know about letting you see the horrible first 100 drafts. Because writing's messy, which, plenty of writers know, but non-writers don't know. A lot of people just think, oh, you're a copywriter, the first thing you write is great. And I'm like, I really, really wish that were the case. It's absolutely not. Um, but kind of taking the pressure off and having it be getting to try it out in the Catalyst, and just, being in there co-working and someone's like, oh, I'm really stuck on this piece of copy. And I'm like, oh, well, you could do this. And even the first couple of times I was like nervous letting people see that it's messy at first. And then I discovered that actually it was really good for both of us, for them to see that it was messy, because people appreciated it more by the time you got it to the part that's to the form that's like, I'm willing to have be public. They were like, oh, like instead of realizing that perfect words don't fall out of my mouth, instead of that undermining my authority, it was to quote my math teacher, like it showed my work. And
Show
they
the
were like,
work.
oh, this is why it's hard. And oh, it made them value what I did. Because can't tell you how many times when I was like first testing this out, people were like, from where it was to where you got it to, like I couldn't have gotten it there. So they valued the work because they saw it fully. But then on top of that, it also did kind of destigmatize it for them. It became, they're not bad writers, because they were holding themselves to this standard of, well, if I was a good writer, the first thing I wrote would be good. And then they're like, I know Darci's a good writer. The first thing she writes is not good sometimes.
Right. It's that permission to be messy.
Yes, exactly. And they're like, oh. the people who are great at this are also messy. So me being messy doesn't actually mean anything. So, and I love giving that to people. Like, I really love if you can watch me be messy and it can make you feel better or give yourself permission to be messy, I'm all for it. Like, that's the best thing that can come out of me being a hot mess, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I want. I just want everyone else to feel better and not be as hard on themselves.
I kind of feel that way about going slow and resting. Like if my life can inspire people to think about rest and working rest into their routine, then we're good.
Yeah, and the reason I value that is because I benefit so much from it. Exactly like what you just described. I need people to model resting for me. I need as many people demonstrating, hey, this is what it looks like to actually be human, to
Mhm.
counteract all of the inhuman messaging we get. Because that's the default in my brain, unfortunately, no matter how much I try and unlearn.
Right. I mean, we grow up with that. That's, the ocean that we, the fish, are swimming in. And it's hard.
Right.
You're not aware of it when you're swimming in it because it's just how you live.
Yeah. But even once you become aware of it, it's still all around you.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
no getting away from it.
Yeah.
So you're still in the ocean. So you just got to start talking to yourself and be like, it's normal to be wet. It is normal. That's probably bad. Okay. Well,
Ricky,
you
you
ever
can edit
worry
that
about
out
like,
if you want.
I'm fine with leaving it in, although I'm a little worried about like it being on the internet at large. My voice just, because edit it down to a snippet. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, Ricky always picks like the best out of context one-liner and puts it at the very end as a stinger. So like after I do the thanks for listening to her podcast, if you could leave us a review,
Mhm.
that'd be really great. And does all that spiel. And then there's like a little pause. And then there's like a stinger of like the one weird thing. Well, there's always a weird thing. But like, so it'll be Darci going, it's normal to be wet.
That's fine with me. It's fine.
The episode that just came out today, I had interviewed Ricky's kid, my step kid, and it's one of the longer stingers because it's us going back and forth about my cat, which lives with them. And I was like, she just wants to create mayhem.
That's a good one. That's excellent.
It was pretty good. So yeah, so I don't know if you're like me. I think you are. I mean, we're a lot alike, but as far as landing in the Catalyst, before I got there, I had tried a lot of stuff, different places.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And a lot of business things. So you do copywriting. I'm an artist. And I don't know how many times I've said this. I wanted to be an artist. I never wanted to be a small business owner.
Yeah.
But if you don't sell your paintings, they pile up pretty fast. So I got to get them out of the house somehow. And you can't do that unless you're like marketing them. And so the business side of things has always been a little tricky for me, but kind of the art side too, because I used to say self-taught, but I'm not self-taught. I'm community taught artist. And even a lot of the art stuff and art business stuff and like plain business stuff is really formulaic. But that's available for people who are like self-taught or looking for online communities and resources is kind of formulaic, one size fits all, do this and you will get 7-figure income.
Yep.
And if you're not, then it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's inaccessible to people who are neurosparkly or neurospicy or neurodivergent, however you choose to identify, or otherwise disabled. Or it's just exhausting.
Yeah,
As
just
we know.
under-resourced. Like anyone who's not, privileged with a ton of resources in any department.
Time, money, energy, wellness.
Yeah.
Especially like, because like our disease and pain management is already a full-time job.
Yes.
Like when I was on medical leave from my teaching job before I ultimately left, I was tracking how many hours a day I was spending on pain management. And I was like, this is a full-time job. Like just my PT and OT to try and get the feeling and use back into like I could use my fingers. I just didn't have any feeling in the tips of my fingers and like my arms. I had pinched nerves and like the fibro was so bad, like I couldn't hold my arms up for extended periods of time. I was doing like 2 to 4 hours of PT and OT a day. Like, how was I supposed to work? There was no way. Plus all the napping. Like, I was trying to recover. It's a full-time job. And then we're trying to run businesses on the side. So like what I just, out of all the things we've tried, I'm trying to think of all the different places that I landed before I got into the Catalyst. Like, what is it? Like, what were some of the places or things that you tried that weren't a good fit before you found what worked for you?
I mean, most of the things I tried prior
I
to
mean, not
that.
to not I don't want to throw anybody under the bus,
No, I'm not gonna name names.
but like I also think it's important to talk about
Yeah.
what didn't work.
I'll say, like, I shortly before joining the Catalyst, I had made a large investment by my standards on a business support membership,
Mhm.
um, that overpromised and underdelivered, and I think probably worked for a small portion of the people that bought into it, but probably not the majority, and that taught me a lot. It was a good lesson to learn, but it really that one stung a lot.
Mhm.
Everything else, I knew myself well enough, thankfully, because I started my business, 10 or 12 years into my chronic illness and disability. So I was aware that like traditional solutions typically don't work for me already, and had built kind of like finding what works for me into my process in all things already. But as you said, like the things that are available at a certain price point or at a certain level of knowledge, tend to be cookie cutter and just often don't work out the way you want them to. So I would say, like, I probably wouldn't have joined the Catalyst if I didn't know Marisa
Mhm.
beforehand. Thankfully, I knew Marisa. I knew how giving she is with her knowledge.
Mhm.
And also, I was one of the first members, so I'm sure it was a ridiculous steal because she was kind of like just figuring out what it was going to be. And I got to really be there from the very beginning and see it develop into what it is now, which is just the most incredible community. But even now, when I like tell people about it, I always feel like I'm like, I'm not try I don't I never wanna, like, proselytize to anyone, and I never want people to think that I'm, like, overpromising,
Right.
because
Yep.
the way I describe it sounds too good to be true. And I certainly think that it might not be right for everybody. Like, competing access needs are a thing. If you are not someone who is ever gonna be able to work up the nerve to pop into the room and be a little vulnerable at first until you get comfortable, then yeah, I would say don't join, you know?
Mhm.
Like, and that's okay. If you're shy, that nothing wrong with being shy. Like, know yourself and know what you can do and can't do, within reason. And maybe there's a different solution out there that is a better fit.
That's what was difficult for me at first was, like, I just start talking.
Right.
Like, I just say, "Hey, I need help." Like, I couldn't believe, like, that's all it is. Like, it's that easy. But that's also really hard when
Right,
you've been
right.
trained not to ask for help.
Yeah, not to need anything. You've been
Right.
trained not to need any.
Thank God for the chat box,
Yep.
because like, that's where I started. I was like, "How do I ask for help?" And they're like, "Oh, you just ask." I was like, "Can I do I make an appointment?" And they're like, "No, you just start talking and ask." I was like, "Okay, okay." Like, I just turn my mic on and I ask. And like now I get there and I'm like, and everyone's like, "Hey, Elle," and I'm like, "Hi guys." But
Right. It's
it was hard at first. There was just a lot of
yeah.
me lurking and listening to everybody else, which is
Yeah.
also a thing I love about it because I didn't even know what kind of questions I should be asking.
Mhm.
Like, that's how unbusinessy I am. But listening to other people build things, I was like, "Oh, I could be doing that. Oh, that's a thing that I haven't done very well. I could fix that." It's like,
Yes.
"Oh, I'm gonna ask for help on that next week." Like,
Exactly. I can't tell you, like, it almost for me swings too far in that direction where I'm like, I really like that idea, just like the general, or I'm like, oh yeah, I do need to do that too, but I don't have time.
yeah.
So we're gonna make a note and come back to it later. Don't get distracted by the sparkly things other people are doing.
Well, and the things that you make, Darcy, are so sparkly. That actually that was there was the one time when you were sharing, like, your content planning. It was like
Oh, yeah.
the spider graph or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the bubble graph.
Yeah.
And I
Yes, I know
was
what you mean.
and in my head I was like, I'm supposed to have a content plan? I was like, well, I don't want to start from scratch. I'll just ask Darci if I can have hers.
Oh,
And then I'll
yes.
just add my own stuff to it. And I asked, and you did.
Oh, good. I was like,
Yeah, no,
worried
you
you were
shared it
gonna
with
be
me.
like, you were like, you said you would share it, but never did.
No, you did. Like that day, I was like, oh, thank you so
Okay, good.
much.
Yeah. No, my favorite thing is to be like, hey guys, look at this thing I did in Canva.
Look at this pretty thing I made in Canva. I was like, can you share that one with me? And I'll just put my words on it.
Yes, always.
Yeah.
Always. So obviously, copywriting is my main thing and whatever. But of course, being neurosparkly, like I like all the things. And so,
You like
it creeps out and I'm like, I love design and I love the brainstorming and the planning and the strategy and all of that. And so then I want all of that to be pretty too, because I'm just like, why not make it pretty if it can be pretty? And so I love kind of that, in my own Done With You membership, Candy Club, it's advertised as being about copy, and you 100% can come in and get copy help. But also, I have members that come in and they're like, I have no idea what to design for Instagram. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we open up a file and I just start and I'm like, what about something like this? What about something? And so I get to like play graphic design, even though that's not what I do. So, I mean, officially.
it's like adjacent skills.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and hey, if they're happy asking me for it, I'm happy to give it. So,
Well, that's like, so I run Spoonie Studio,
yes.
and which is a like a virtual art studio space for disabled and chronically ill creatives of any discipline. And it's technically a 2-hour time and space for working on whatever creative projects we have going on. But the conversation has never been limited to just art stuff. There's one member of Spoonie Studio who is a filmmaker, but is learning to paint with acrylics. And so she's always like, can I ask a stupid question? Can I ask a stupid question? I'm like, there's no stupid questions. We're all here to make stuff. And so she's asking a lot of like acrylic painting 101 questions, which I love helping people learn that because that was me before.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn that somewhere. But then we get into conversations about productivity and internalized ableism because we're all, exhausted and in pain. And we're like, oh, we didn't feel like we did very much this week. I'm like, yeah, but like, you're here. Like, you did something. And like, pain management is a thing. Like, you can count pain management as a task you accomplished.
Yeah.
For me, showering is a task that I accomplished. Before we recorded today, I showered and then I had to like wait for my core temperature to go back down so I could, come and record.
I considered showering prior to coming here and then was like, I don't have the energy for that.
Yep.
So
Yeah. No, I was just too gross. I don't think I could have focused if I had showered. But I
I'm
also
like,
have ice water now.
I'm right on the middle where I'm like, I want to wash my hair, but it's not to the point where I'm like, this is all I can think about. So I was
Yep.
like, yeah, we're going to save the energy so I'm not too foggy for our conversation.
Right. Nope, I get it. It's the type of thing we have to plan for.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing we talk about in Spoonie Studio is like our agendas, our planners, our task lists inherently look different. And it's okay that they don't live up to or match or are completely incomparable to an abled or well or healthy person's to-do list.
We really have to give ourselves credit for the fact that, I mean, at least for me, this shit is not predictable.
No.
It's not. Like, yes, I can overdo it and know that I'm asking for trouble,
Mhm.
but there's plenty of times when I either had no way of knowing that I was going to be overtaxed, like very recently, and as has happened 10 times already this year, when my 7-year-old started throwing up wa- on Thursday evening, and I was just like, great, amazing. There goes my weekend. Like, obviously, I'm happy to take care of her. Um, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else when she's sick anyway. But it's just like, there's no accounting for that. There's no saving up energy for that. I have the energy I have.
Mhm.
you know? And if I get into a deficit, I'm into a deficit and there's no gaining it back. So you just kind of, I don't know how I'm going to feel from one day to the next. And that's not my fault. It's not within my control, but it doesn't mean that I shouldn't be able to do what I love, that I can't help people with their copy, that I
Mhm.
can't help businesses that are trying to make the world better, like get their message out there, or other chronically ill and disabled small business owners like feel more confident in their copy and in their messaging.
Mhm.
I just had to find a way to deliver it that, you know, worked with my body.
Mhm.
So thankfully, Done With You is that, because for copywriting, the standard project is, you know, you meet and hire a copywriter to create a specific thing, your website copy, or launch emails, or a email welcome sequence, or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. And like for a website, for complete website copy, timeline could be anywhere from a month to 3 months, more if you have to wait to start because the copywriter's booked. And not only was that not sustainable for me, that custom project template like does not work well. I don't even think the clients who can easily afford it and easily manage it like it. It's a lot of waiting. And even though the end result is great, that waiting time always seemed to kind of have the client feeling anxious, no matter how much I could build in to be like, this is what's going on and this is totally normal. It being back behind a curtain just made them worry that they had invested all this money and it wasn't going to be good. So until we had like done one project together and gone to the next, that always seemed to have them stressed. And I don't want my clients to be stressed when they're
Yeah.
working with me. But then on top of that, it just isn't super accessible to people like me. Like part of why I don't hire contractors for custom projects. Would I have loved to have a custom design website? Yes. Fabulous. Save me the time of doing it. But can I manage the project management tasks and getting the designer what they need and all of that and the upfront costs and all? Like, no, it's too much on top of what I'm already managing.
Mhm.
So I built my own with the help of Marisa and the Catalyst, thank God. And because of that, I have a website I really love. But I mean, that was not without putting a lot of my own sweat equity into it. So, all that being said, like chronically ill, disabled, neurodivergent, custom projects just don't feel like a great fit. And the other thing is like about custom projects, sorry, being ADD right now, I'm like, oh, wait, I forgot one thing, is that it's focused on one thing. Your business needs so many words. And what feels super important right now in the early years of your business can change.
Mhm.
So by the time you're halfway through that website, you're like, oh, I've decided. I mean, I've had more established brands be like, we've decided to pivot. And I'm like, that's awesome. But I wrote this copy based on that. I mean, we can pivot, but if I'm starting the work from scratch, you're paying me again.
Yeah, it's like, "Pay me."
Like it's well within your rights to want to pivot in your business. But I can't just scratch the work I just did. Whereas with Done With You, I can. Like, Done With You, someone comes into Candy Club Mini and says, I really need to fix my homepage. Okay, fine. We work on fixing their homepage. They feel better about it. They go away. They can come back to the next meeting, which they're 2 weeks apart, and be like, I have a different ideal client now. I want to make the homepage copy specific to that. I'm like, that's fine. I haven't been working on it all that time. Like, we do what we do in the room together, and then it's done. It's not like I did all this work that then I have to throw in the trash. Like, it's your website. If you want to change it, let's go change it. So then we change it again. Like, that really suits me too, because I do think, like, especially in the earlier years, your brand is going to evolve. Your messaging needs to evolve. Your copy will evolve. Like, none of it is carved in stone. It's, a beautiful painting that you hang in a museum and it's there forever. Like, no. Beauty of the internet is that you can change it.
Mhm.
Like, no whiteout necessary. So if there's a way to make it better, let's go make it better right now. So you can do all of that with Done With You. People can come in and be like, I really have no idea where to even start. And if you have no idea where to even start, how are you going to hire a copywriter? Like, people are going to think they're not ready, but they need copy from like day one. So they get stuck and their business isn't growing because they're copy's confusing, but they can't pay a custom project copywriter the money that they're not making because like it's just an endless loop. So anyway, so yeah, I love Done With You. It's super flexible. You can get what you need when you need it. And I also can show up and I give you what I've got that day. And I haven't promised anything
Mm-hmm.
in the future. It's just a lot less taxing for me to be able to be like, you have full access to all my copy knowledge for the next 2 hours. Go.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, I'm going to make this thing and work on it over the next 3 weeks for you.
Yeah. I totally get it. When I got sick and the migraines started to get really bad, I felt so flaky and unreliable, even though like it felt like a character flaw, even though it had nothing to do with my character. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or I felt like other people perceived it that way. And I think being able to offer things on a done with you basis and like for you, and then for me, like limiting the number of commitments that I agree to on a day or a week. The way I have my calendar set up is I can only do like a certain number of things a week. Helps me stay in integrity with my commitments because I do like to overcommit myself because I want to do all the things. I want to do everything people ask me to do. I like to be involved, but my body and my brain tell me, no, you got to rest.
Yeah.
And then I feel flaky. And then there's that internalized
Judgment.
that judgment of like, oh, I had to cancel. I had to bail. I had to reschedule. I can't be there, which is honestly, rescheduling is fine. Like there's nothing inherently wrong with canceling or rescheduling. People do it all the time. Most deadlines are arbitrary. I mean, the number of times that I email when I email back and forth with people, I'm like, I'm not here to create urgency. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no, all the deadlines I have for the podcast are completely self-imposed. Like none of them are like the IRS. And even the IRS, you can file an extension. Like there are
Yeah.
no deadlines. They're all fake. But I also want to be like able to follow through on my commitments, right? So it's just this weird balance of like, how can I do that with a body that's fickle? And that's to limit my commitments to just a couple a week.
I used to say that deadlines make me want to die, and it's not hyperbole. Um, but now I say deadlines are dead to me because I've basically eliminated them in my business
Mm-hmm.
with thanks to Done With You. And I do think that deadlines, like with the custom copy model, the deadlines are necessary, as much as it pains me to say.
Right.
Because without them, when projects would get off track, I would have committed to working on something and then not been able to do it because the client didn't get me what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And that would push things out. And when you can only take on so many clients at a time and you've blocked out that time and then it doesn't get used, it cuts into your income. It made it so like my business could not one project going wrong threatened my whole business.
Right.
And to some extent that was an issue with me not charging enough. But that also is just true for that model of
Mm-hmm.
copywriting. And so like I don't blame clients for needing me to stick to deadlines for the same reason and all of that. Like as much as I understand that, I'm also like I can't prioritize that over my health or my
Exactly.
client's health. If my client is having a health issue, like I'm going to push it and whatever. So I really had to find a way to just get away from deadlines altogether because I couldn't find a way to stay profitable and be in integrity with how I feel about them.
Right.
And the type of latitude I want to extend to my clients. I want them to be able to be fully human and get sick. We are in a pandemic. Like I need to be able to allow for that. But the capitalist model is like, no, machines only. Like,
Right. Yep.
So Done With You that was the ultimate goal, was getting me away from deadlines
Yep.
so that I didn't have to enforce them and I didn't have to meet them. But my clients still got what they needed and I got to do what I love to do.
Yep. And I think that is a good place to sort of wrap up and say that that's the beauty of the place where we both finally landed, is that we get to make the rules for our own business. We don't have to follow anybody else's models.
Yeah, and you get to learn from so many different businesses, which is the best part. I mean, like, I love so much that when I started realizing that, like, Done With You copywriting worked, Marisa was like, "You should make this a thing. Like, you should create a membership for your business with it." And I'm like, "I can't do that. That'd be like the catalyst. I'd be copying you." And she's like, that's we don't do that here. Like, do it.
There's
You should
enough for
do it."
everybody.
Yes, exactly. And so I mean, certainly how I already feel about things, but it's just lovely that, you know, it's modeled so well in the Catalyst, and
Mm-hmm.
they have been cheering me on the entire time I've built Candy Club Mini, and my business would look so different, and I wouldn't know you
Yeah.
if I hadn't joined the Catalyst, so that was great.
Yep. So if people want to join Candy Club or Candy Club Mini, how do they find you?
You can go to my website, sweettoothcreative.com.
Great.
Candy Club, the higher tier, which is 40 hours a month of Done With You co-writing support, is currently closed, but
Okay.
enrollment is probably going to open up again this summer. But, you know, hey, deadlines.
And life.
Yeah, Candy Club Mini is open year round. Anyone can come in anytime and join. And we meet twice a month for 2 hours each time. And you can get my eyes and my brain on looking at whatever you want, whether that's copy, content, design, strategy, whatever. And then since it's a podcast, I also have my own podcast launching soon called Brand Jam.
Brand Jam?
Brand Jam, yes.
Yum, delicious.
Yes.
More sugar.
Yes. My co-host, I was like, Brand Jam, when I suggested Brand Jam as a name, I was like, you know, and that could mean like just like fun, hanging out, talking, whatever. Or we could lean into the food aspect of it. But that might be too like much my brand and not your brand, because like obviously I lean into the sweets really hard. And I didn't want to take over
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to make sure she didn't feel like I was dominating anything. And she's like, "No, all the bread puns, please, like more." So it's great. We fully
Yes.
leaned into it, and it makes me very happy.
Let's get that bread.
Yeah. She made the cutest little illustrations and stuff for the logo on the website. Uh I can't wait for us to get our act together and actually publish it. But season 1's done and recorded and edited, and we just have to get it out there. So should be
Awesome.
soon.
Well,
But
that sounds great.
yeah, and you can find us on socials at brandjampod.com. Or no, sorry, not .com for the socials. At brandjampod, or the website, which is not published yet, but hopefully will be by the time this airs, brandjampod.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hoof. To view the complete show notes and all the links mentioned in today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit hoorfpodcast.com. That's HOORF podcast.com. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released. And if you're enjoying our podcast, I'd love to have you leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are one of the major ways that Apple ranks their podcasts, so even though it only takes you a few seconds, it really does make a difference for us. Become a patron. For $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, pay my editor, and join a community of fellow caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, in this episode of Hoof. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Hoof is hosted by Elle Billing at Elle and Wink. Audio editing by Ricky Cummings at Ricky Poo. Music composed by Ricky Cummings. Hoof is a production of Elle and Wink Art Studio, all rights reserved. Hoof Podcast can be found on social media channels at Hoof Podcast, at HOORF Podcast. Yeah, Ricky always picks like the best out of context one liner and puts it at the very end.